Your soulmate is about to confess why they married for money instead of choosing you. My beloved child, what you are about to hear changes the meaning of everything your soulmate once left unexplained. For so long, you may have believed they simply chose someone else, that their heart moved on, that the future they once imagined with you disappeared without a second thought. But that is not what happened. Behind their decision was a truth they have kept buried because admitting it would force them to reveal something they were never ready to say aloud. They did not marry because their heart found something greater. They made a choice based on money, security, and the life they believed they needed, and now that choice is becoming impossible for them to hide from emotionally. Don't skip, because the reason they made that decision is only the beginning. Something huge is waiting for you, and the deepest revelation is not why they chose money. It is what they secretly felt about you while making that choice. There was a moment when your soulmate stood between two completely different futures. One looked secure on the outside. It promised comfort, stability, approval, and fewer questions about tomorrow. The other future was connected to you, and that future carried something money could never guarantee, a feeling they could not control. They convinced themselves that choosing security was the sensible decision. They told themselves emotions would eventually fade. They believed time would make you feel like a chapter they could simply close. But something unexpected happened. The more they tried to build a life around the choice they made, the more clearly they understood what that choice had cost them. Stay till the end, because this is where their confession becomes much bigger. They are beginning to realize that having what once looked valuable does not automatically create the feeling they thought would come with it. And there is one memory of you they have never been able to erase, a memory connected to something you said without even realizing how deeply it stayed with them. Now the truth they have avoided is pushing closer to the surface. Your soulmate has replayed the decision in their mind more times than anyone around them knows, and every replay leads back to the same question: what would my life have looked like if I had chosen differently? That question is becoming harder to silence because they finally understand something they could not understand before. They may have chosen financial security, but that decision never automatically replaced the emotional connection they associated with you. And here comes the part they have been most afraid to confess. Before they made their choice, there was a moment when they almost changed everything. They almost stepped away from the future everyone expected them to accept. Something stopped them, and that something is the secret behind this entire story. Don't skip. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you, because when you discover what happened during that final moment before their decision, you will understand why your soulmate has never been able to tell the complete truth about why they did not choose you. There is one detail your soulmate has never spoken about, and it happened much closer to their marriage decision than anyone realizes. Just before everything became final, they experienced a moment that made them question the entire future they were about to choose. They thought about you. Not casually, not as some distant memory, but as the person connected to the life they were quietly leaving behind. For a brief moment, everything they had been telling themselves stopped making sense. Money could offer comfort. Security could remove uncertainty. Approval could make their decision easier to explain. But none of those things could answer the question growing inside them: why am I still thinking about the person I did not choose? Don't skip, because this is where the story turns. They had been trying to convince themselves that choosing the safer life would eventually make their feelings disappear. Yet right before making that commitment, those feelings became impossible for them to ignore. Something huge is waiting for you, because there was one specific reason they still moved forward, and it had almost nothing to do with love. What stopped them from changing their decision was fear of losing the security already placed in front of them. They had started measuring the future through practical things: financial stability, expectations, comfort, and the promise that life would become easier. Somewhere along the way, they began believing that choosing with the heart was too uncertain. So they made themselves accept a painful idea: perhaps a secure future mattered more than an emotionally meaningful one. But after the decision was made, something surprising began happening. The life they had carefully calculated could not stop certain memories of you from returning. Small moments came back without invitation. A conversation. A look. A sentence you once said. The feeling of being understood without having to explain everything. And every memory carried the same uncomfortable question: had they mistaken financial certainty for emotional certainty? Stay till the end, because they are finally reaching an answer, and it is not the answer they expected. What they once considered the smartest decision of their life is now forcing them to confront what they actually valued all along, but the biggest confession has still not surfaced. Your soulmate is beginning to admit something even to themselves: choosing money was never proof that you meant less. In their mind at the time, it was a decision about survival, stability, expectations, and the future they believed they were supposed to build. Yet there was something they never anticipated. They thought once they chose that path, the door connected to you would close emotionally. It did not happen that way. Instead, one unanswered question remained behind that door, growing stronger with time: what if the person I walked away from was the person I could never truly replace? Don't skip. Something huge is waiting for you, because there is another layer to their decision that changes everything again. Someone close to them knew they were uncertain before the marriage. That person noticed what your soulmate was trying desperately to hide, and one conversation between them revealed exactly whose name was still living inside your soulmate's thoughts. What happened in that private conversation is the part your soulmate never expected anyone to notice. Someone close to them looked past the smiles, the plans, and the confident answers and asked one simple question: are you choosing this because it is what you truly want, or because it gives you the life you think you need? Your soulmate could not answer immediately. That silence revealed more than words ever could. Because deep inside, they already knew the difference. One path offered financial comfort and certainty, while the other was connected to a feeling they had never completely understood until they were about to lose it. And then something happened that changed the entire conversation. The person sitting across from them mentioned you. Suddenly, your soulmate could no longer pretend that you were just part of the past. Don't skip, because their reaction exposed something they had been hiding even from themselves. Something huge is waiting for you, and it begins with what they said immediately after hearing your name. They did not say they had forgotten you. They did not say you meant nothing anymore. Instead, they became quiet and admitted something far more revealing: choosing you would have required them to trust an uncertain future, while choosing financial security felt easier to explain to everyone around them. But the person listening understood what your soulmate was really saying. They had chosen the future that looked safer, not necessarily the future that felt deepest. And that realization stayed with your soulmate. Afterward, they began remembering moments with you differently. Things that once seemed ordinary suddenly felt priceless. The conversations where they could be themselves. The moments when you understood something without needing a long explanation. The strange sense that being around you made everything else quieter. Stay till the end, because there is one memory they keep returning to more than all the others. It happened before they made their final choice, and now they believe that moment was trying to tell them something they refuse to understand. That memory contains the beginning of their biggest confession. You once said or did something that made your soulmate imagine what a future with you might actually feel like, not what it would look like to everyone else, not how impressive it would appear, but how it would feel when nobody was watching. They pushed that thought away because it challenged everything they were preparing to choose. Yet now, after all this time, that same memory has become the comparison they cannot escape. Money answered practical questions, but it never answered the emotional question they buried that day. And here is what makes everything even more surprising. Your soulmate has recently admitted to themselves that if they could return to that exact moment with what they understand now, they would not make the decision so quickly. Don't skip. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you, because the next truth is not simply about regret. It is about what your soulmate secretly wanted to tell you before the marriage, and why those words were never allowed to leave their lips. The words your soulmate almost told you were far more revealing than anything they had admitted before. There was a moment when they wanted to reach out and tell you that their decision was not a reflection of your worth, nor proof that their feelings had simply disappeared. They wanted you to understand that they were choosing the life that appeared safest to them at that time, even while part of their heart questioned whether safety was enough. But they stopped themselves. They imagined what might happen if you answered. They wondered whether hearing your voice, reading your words, or simply knowing you still cared would make them question everything they had already agreed to. So they remained silent. Don't skip, because that silence became one of the biggest unanswered moments of their life. Something huge is waiting for you, and what they almost admitted was simple but powerful. I am making the practical choice, but I don't know if it is the choice my heart would make. That sentence never reached you, yet it continued echoing inside them long after their decision became reality. Then came the realization they never planned for. They had assumed financial comfort would create emotional peace automatically, but those two things were not the same. The more time passed, the more they noticed the difference between having security and feeling deeply understood. And every time that difference became obvious, their thoughts returned to you. Not because the past can simply be rewritten, but because you became connected in their memory to something money could never purchase, the feeling of being seen for who they really were. Stay till the end, because this is where their confession becomes even more surprising. They began asking themselves whether they had spent so much time protecting their future that they ignored what their heart was trying to tell them in the present. And one particular night, that question became impossible to dismiss. They remembered the final meaningful interaction they had with you before everything changed, and suddenly they understood something about your words that they had completely missed at the time. That memory is now opening the door to the truth they have avoided the longest. Your soulmate finally understands that the choice they made was built around what they feared losing: money, stability, approval, certainty, not necessarily around what they most wanted to feel. And now they can see why your memory continued returning even when they tried to move forward. You represented the road they never allowed themselves to fully explore. Don't skip. Something huge is waiting for you, because there is still one confession beneath everything you have heard so far. Before choosing the financially secure path, your soulmates secretly imagined walking away from it. They pictured what would happen if they chose differently. They even imagined the first words they would say to you. But then something occurred that changed their mind almost immediately, and when you discover what influenced that final decision, the entire reason behind their marriage will become clearer than ever before. The final influence behind your soulmate's decision was something they have struggled to admit even to themselves. At the exact moment when they were questioning everything, they started thinking about what would happen if they walked away from the financially secure future already arranged around them. They imagined the questions. They imagined disappointing people who believed this was the right choice. They imagined giving up certainty for a future that could not be predicted. And suddenly, the pressure became louder than the feeling inside their heart. So they convinced themselves that choosing security was maturity, while choosing an uncertain connection with you was something they could no longer afford emotionally. Don't skip, because what happened afterward completely challenged that belief. They expected relief once the decision became final. Instead, there was one question they could never completely silence: why does the life I didn't choose still matter to me? Something huge is waiting for you, because the answer eventually led them straight back to you. As time passed, your soulmate began understanding what they had actually sacrificed. It was not simply a relationship possibility. It was the chance to discover whether the connection they felt with you could have become something lasting. That uncertainty became more powerful because it never received an answer. Whenever they remembered you, they were not only remembering the past, they were remembering an unfinished possibility. Stay till the end, because this is where their hidden truth becomes impossible to misunderstand. Your soulmate did not choose money because you lacked something. They chose what money represented to them at that moment: certainty, approval, comfort, and protection from an unpredictable future. But now they understand that a life can look perfectly planned from the outside while still leaving important questions unanswered inside. And one of those questions has your name attached to it. They have wondered what you thought when they disappeared into another future. They have wondered whether you believed they never cared. Most of all, they have wondered what you would say if you finally knew the real reason. And now comes the confession they have rehearsed silently more than once. If they could speak without hiding behind explanations, they would tell you that their choice was never a measurement of your value. They would admit that they were afraid to gamble with the future they had been taught to protect. They would tell you that financial security looked like an answer when their life felt filled with uncertainty. But then they would reveal something much bigger. After choosing that security, they discovered that some questions cannot be answered by money at all. Don't skip. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate has one final truth they have not yet confronted, the truth about what they would choose if the same decision somehow appeared before them today. And their answer is completely different from the answer they gave the first time. Now the question your soulmate has avoided for the longest has finally become impossible to escape. If they stood at that same crossroads today, knowing everything they know now, would they make the same choice again? For a long time, they refused to answer because the truth would force them to admit how much they have changed. Back then, money looked like certainty. Stability looked like happiness. A carefully planned future looked more dependable than following a connection they could not completely explain. But experience taught them something they could never have learned from the outside. what looks valuable and what feels meaningful are not always the same thing. Don't skip, because this realization is where their entire confession changes direction. They are no longer asking whether choosing financial security made sense at the time. They are asking why they allowed fear of uncertainty to speak louder than what they genuinely felt. And when they finally answered that question privately, one person immediately entered their mind: you. Something even deeper followed that realization. Your soulmate began mentally returning to the days before their decision, searching for the exact moment when they stopped listening to themselves. And they found it. There was a point when they already knew that choosing money would give them a predictable future, but they also knew they were leaving an emotional question unanswered. They simply believed that unanswered question would disappear with time. It never completely did. Stay till the end, because this is the revelation they never expected to face. The strongest memory was not about something expensive, dramatic, or extraordinary. It was an ordinary moment with you when they felt completely understood. That memory survived every attempt to rationalize the past because it represented something they could not calculate. Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate finally understands why that simple memory mattered more than they realized. It showed them the difference between someone fitting into a plan and someone touching a part of their life that no plan could replace, and if the same choice appeared before them today, their answer would no longer begin with money. That is the confession they were once too uncertain to make. They would ask different questions now. Where do I feel understood? Where can I be genuine? Which future am I choosing because I truly want it, and which future am I choosing because I am afraid of uncertainty? Don't skip, because there is one last layer beneath even this realization. Your soulmate has imagined telling you everything, not to erase the past or pretend choices have no consequences, but because they no longer want you believing that you were simply rejected for something more valuable. In their deepest reflection, they finally recognize that money influenced the direction they chose, while their feelings were far more complicated than their decision ever revealed. And the sentence they once could not say has become clearer inside them: I chose the future that looked secure, but I never gave the other future a fair chance. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you, because what matters now is not changing yesterday, it is the truth they can no longer hide from themselves about why you remain the unanswered chapter. The unanswered chapter has finally reached the sentence your soulmate has been afraid to finish. For so long, they believed they could place you somewhere in the past, close that door, and continue living inside the future they had chosen. But every time they tried to explain their decision to themselves, one truth remained untouched: they never truly discovered what a life with you could have become. That is why your memory carried a different weight. You were not simply someone they left behind, you represented the road they abandoned before reaching the destination. Don't skip, because this is where their confession becomes more revealing than the marriage itself. They have finally stopped pretending money was the complete answer. Money was the reason they could explain. Security was the reason other people could understand. Stability was the reason that sounded sensible. But beneath all of those explanations was another truth: choosing you required courage to step into uncertainty, and at that moment, they did not have enough of it. Something huge is waiting for you, because admitting this changes the meaning of everything they once allowed you to believe. There is another realization your soulmate never expected to face. They used to think the biggest question was whether they made the correct decision. Now they understand that the deeper question is why they believed a decision could be correct simply because it looked safe. That realization changed how they remember you. They no longer compare two people or two lifestyles, they compare two versions of themselves. One version made decisions based on certainty, approval, and financial comfort. The other version, the person they are becoming now, understands that emotional truth cannot always be placed inside a calculation. Stay till the end, because one memory recently made this impossible for them to ignore. They remembered something about the way you treated them when there was nothing for you to gain. No status. No financial promise. No guaranteed future. You simply cared about who they were in that moment. And suddenly they understood why that memory survived for so long. It represented something genuine that never needed to prove its value with money. Don't skip, because that realization brought them closer than ever to admitting the words they once swallowed, that if your soulmate could finally speak without defending the past, their confession would sound very different now. They would tell you, I thought choosing security meant I was choosing the strongest future. I did not understand that I was also walking away from a question my heart would continue asking. They would admit that you deserved clarity instead of silence. They would admit that their choice reflected what they prioritized then, not your worth. And most surprisingly, they would admit that the greatest lesson did not come from what they gained, it came from finally understanding what money could never decide for them. Something huge is waiting for you, because there is still one truth beyond regret, memories, and unanswered questions. Your soulmate has begun wondering what they would say if they ever stood face to face with you again and had only one chance to explain everything. They already know the first sentence. But the sentence that would come immediately afterward is the one that reveals what they truly wanted from you all along. The first sentence your soulmate would say to you now would not be an excuse, it would be an admission. I need you to know that the choice I made was never proof that you were not enough. For years, those words remained trapped behind pride, circumstances, and the need to defend a decision that once seemed practical. But now they understand what silence may have made you believe. You may have thought they compared you with money and decided money mattered more. The truth inside their confession is more complicated. They were comparing uncertainty with security, and they allowed security to win because they were afraid of what they could not guarantee. Don't skip, because the sentence that follows changes everything. They would look at you and admit, what I truly wanted from you was never wealth, status, or perfection. I wanted the feeling I had when I could simply be myself around you. Something huge is waiting for you, because they only understood the value of that feeling after choosing a future built around everything they once believed mattered more. But there is one realization even they were not prepared for. Your soulmate has finally recognized that their deepest regret is not simply that they chose differently, it is that they never gave you the complete truth before they did. They allowed you to walk away with questions. They allowed appearances to tell the story for them. And somewhere inside, they hoped time would make that unfinished story irrelevant. Instead, time made the missing words clearer. Stay till the end, because this is the confession hidden beneath every other confession. They wish they had trusted you enough to tell you what they were facing. They wish they had said, I am scared of an uncertain future. I am being pulled towards security. But none of that means what I felt with you was meaningless. If those words had been spoken, perhaps nothing would have changed, or perhaps everything would have. They will never know, and that unanswered possibility is exactly why your memory remained different from every ordinary memory they expected to forget. Now your soulmate understands the lesson there.